Wedding canceled via bride cheating. Friday night, I stopped by Toby's Grill around 7:30 p.m. I was dead tired after spending the previous 2 days in the Big Apple finalizing negotiations with a major international bank. When the day began, I was pessimistic about whether we would ever come to an agreement, but it seemed the unresolved obstacles began to fall like domino knuckles shortly after our Friday meeting began. By noon, only 2 stumbling blocks remained. We decided to take a break and go out to lunch. I found the nearest Jewish deli and ordered a sinfully large pastrami and Swiss cheese with rye bread and savored every bite. When we reconvened at 1:30, George Willis, the lead negotiator from the bank, said, "We have made tremendous progress. I suggest we split the difference on the last 2 items." George passed the paper across the conference table, and I read what he was proposing. It definitely didn't split the difference equally, but it was easily within the bounds of what my partners and I could accept to win this large contract. I scribbled my initials on the page, and George said he would email me the official contract on Monday. After shaking hands, we went our separate ways. I went back to my hotel, packed my bags, and checked out. I was thinking about staying in town for the night because my fiancée Trish was away for the weekend with her 2 older sisters. They were staying at one of Connecticut's giant Indian casinos. They planned to spend their days at the pool and spa and their evenings at the best bars and restaurants. Rather than spend another night away from home, I headed to Grand Central Station and took the Metro North train to New Haven. By 7:30, I was on I-91 toward Hartford and off the highway. I headed through the always popular West Hartford town center, where I decided to stop for dinner. I was sitting at Toby's bar when I spotted my 2 future sisters-in-law through the bar mirror, sliding into a horseshoe-shaped table. Their husbands had settled in beside them. The immediate knot in my stomach and the pain that seemed to spread to every inch of my body told me that my wedding plans, which were exactly 8 weeks away, were in trouble. My sisters-in-law were supposed to be at the casino with Trish. I left the bar, called Trish, and she answered, "Hi, love. How's the big city?" Same as always. "We've completed a successful negotiation, and I'm on my way to dinner. How I wish you were with me." "You're so sweet, Chris. I miss you too." We had a ball all afternoon. We lounged by the pool and sipped drinks. I'm getting a pretty good pre-wedding tan. A few minutes later, I meet up with my sisters for dinner. Trish and I talked some more before exchanging "I love yous" and ending the conversation. I checked the Find My Phone app and entered Trish's information. I wasn't sure where Trish was, but her phone was in Falmouth, Massachusetts, on the western tip of Cape Cod. Damn, I thought to myself. Trish's longtime neighbor and friend, Nick Flaherty, had a family home in Falmouth. We'd been invited there several times. Looking through my contact information, I found Sue Flaherty's phone number, so I called. Sue answered. I said, "Hi, Sue. This is Chris Harrington." "Chris? Chris Harrington, what a nice surprise. How are the wedding plans coming along? Nick and I can't wait for the festivities." "To be honest, I'm not sure how the plans are going." Sue laughed. This is a typical male response. "Tell Sue, did Nick go traveling this weekend?" What a strange question. Nick almost never has to travel for the weekend, but this weekend he's away. "What's the big deal?" Sue asked with a slight concern in her voice. "Do you have a Find My Phone app on your phone?" Sue involuntarily sobbed and said almost in a whisper, "Not again." A moment later, she continued, "He's supposed to be in Philadelphia, but the beacon shows he's at his family's cottage." With a sad sigh, I said, "I'm sorry, Sue. Nick and Trish are there together." Sue cried quietly for a few minutes. "It's not the first time," she admitted. "I'm going to call the asshole and tell him not to come home. Can I ask you a favor, Sue? Trish isn't due home until Sunday afternoon. Same goes for Nick. Let's postpone our confrontation until tomorrow night. In the meantime, I'm going to change the locks on my condo door and withdraw half the wedding money from our joint account. I'll pack all her clothes and other personal items and leave the bags in the driveway." "You're right, Chris. I'll do the same thing. Please text or call if you need someone to talk to. I'm sorry I had to tell you. Sue cried again, and between sobs said, It's not your fault, Chris. My last call was to Billy Jones, a friend and neighbor. I need help, Billy. Will you be home tomorrow morning? My only plans are to sleep in until noon, but Sally will wake me up at 7. What can I do for you? Can you change the lock on my front door and the door leading out of the garage? And change the code on the garage door opener? I'd be very grateful. A moment of silence followed before Billy said, Is the wedding canceled? Unless I'm missing something important, Trish and I are dead and buried. I got it. I'll get on it first thing in the morning and change everything. Does that work? Yeah, Billy, thank you. Feeling 20 years older, I staggered back into Toby's and headed for the bar. I stared in the mirror at the reflection of my sisters-in-law and their husbands as the waiter cleared away their appetizers. I grabbed a bar stool and, with my drink, headed over to my former future family's table. As I plopped onto the stool at the end of the table, climbed into my seat, and angrily shifted my gaze from Julie to Karen, the atmosphere quickly turned chilly. Chris! Buddy, get over here. Look at the menu, said Steve, Karen's husband. Without taking my eyes off the women, I replied, No thanks, Steve. I won't be staying long. I continued to stare at Julie and Karen in silence until Roy, Julie's husband, asked, What's going on, Chris? Ask your wife, Roy. Roy and Steve turned to their wives. It was easy to see that both women were scared to death. What's going on? Steve asked his sisters. Karen spoke first. It's not what you think, Chris. I'm assuming it's exactly what I think it is. Steve and Roy shifted their gazes from their wives to me. As tears streamed down Karen's face, Steve asked once more, What's going on, Chris? Your wives are covering for Trish. They were all together in my kitchen last Tuesday. Since I was going to be out of town until Sunday, they were going to Foxwoods Casino for the weekend. Where's Trish? Roy asked his sisters. When they fell silent, he turned and looked at me. She's at Nick's house on Cape Cod. Is that true? Steve hissed. At that moment, both women were crying. Karen nodded in agreement. Julie sobbed. Trish loves you, Chris. She really does love you. Steve rolled his eyes and Roy stared at the tabletop. She has a great way of showing her love. She and her sisters lie to me, and she goes off with the old neighborhood guy for a love fest weekend, just 8 weeks before she marries me. Your sister is a fool and a cheater. Don't you dare! Roy interrupted his wife. Shut up, Julie. Turning to me, he asked, What are you going to do? I'm going to cancel the wedding, of course. Both friends leaned back in their chairs. Their wives cried even harder. Dad spent so much money on the wedding and reception, Karen sobbed. I don't care. I'm not going to marry a lying, cheating fool like Trish. I waited a few moments. We'd talked to Sue Flaherty about Nick cheating with Trish. We both wished we could get 24 hours before we crushed them. 4 pairs of eyes looked at me as I asked Roy and Steve, I need your help. Can you make sure... My head jerked toward their wives. Can you make sure they don't contact Trish before 6:15 tomorrow night? Both women started to protest before Steve spoke up. We certainly can, buddy. Then, turning to his wife, he said, You disgust me. I have to wonder if your sisters ever covered for you while you were cheating on me. Karen was stunned, and Steve continued, If you or Julie contact Trish in any way, I'll consider filing for divorce. Roy's face was bright red with anger. His words caused Julie to groan sadly when he said, After the problems we had at the beginning of our 3rd year together, I could have filed for divorce anyway. But rest assured, I will definitely file if you contact Trish. I shook hands with both men and walked out of the restaurant. Saturday had been stressful. It took me several hours to remove the last traces of Trish from our house. Instead of stacking filled trash bags in the driveway, I rented a small storage unit, and my neighbor Billy lent me his pickup truck. It only took 3 trips to haul all the bags to the storage unit. The hardest part was writing a letter to our wedding guests. I worked on the email piece by piece throughout the day. It said, Harrington and Clark Wedding News. Dear friends, I am currently halfway through my wedding, just 8 short weeks before my wedding day to Trish Clark. The weekend was spectacular because I discovered that Trish spent her weekend in another man's bed. Trish and her longtime neighbor Nick Flaherty had cheated on me and Nick's wife Sue. With the help of Trish's sisters, Karen and Julie, and their lies, the couple is spending this weekend together on Cape Cod. You may wonder why I find this appalling behavior impressive. The reason is simple. I'm not married to Trish. It's much easier to call off the wedding than to go through the agony of divorce. This letter is my official notification that I'm calling off my wedding to Trish Clark. Sincerely, Christopher Harrington. I called Sue Flaherty at 5:30 on Saturday afternoon. Together we told each other about the tasks we were able to accomplish. Since Sue was married, it was much more difficult for her to part ways with Nick. She was able to speak with an attorney and had an appointment for Monday morning. The attorney recommended canceling the joint credit cards and dividing the family finances as much as possible. It was typical divorce legal advice. We ended our conversation a few minutes before 6 p.m. and agreed to send our couples a text message at 6 sharp. My message simply stated, I hope you are enjoying your weekend with Nick. Thank you for showing me and the world that you are a liar, cheater, and cheater. Our wedding is off. I sent the email at 6 p.m. sharp. And immediately I sent an email to our family and guests. 16 months later. I stood on the edge of the altar. My best man and friends of the groom stood to my sides. The bridesmaids looked stunning as they walked down the center aisle of the church. Tears came to my eyes as I looked to the back of the church. Father Trish stood proudly, dressed in his black tuxedo. His eyes, like mine and those of the rest of our guests, were fixed on the most beautiful bride in the world. Her blonde hair was styled and looked beautiful under a small white veil. Her blue eyes sparkled and were full of love, while her dark red lips brought vicious thoughts of our upcoming wedding night. The tight white wedding dress emphasized her heavenly figure without making her look slutty. It was beautiful. As Mr. Clark and my bride headed down the aisle toward me, I felt a pair of eyes drilling a hole in me. I looked around at the guests on my side of the church before glancing to my bride's side. That's when I saw Trish. Tears were rolling down her cheeks in hail. I saw her say quietly, "I'm sorry," before she turned to see her father and younger sister walking towards me. The end.